Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The candle was flickering low. The sauce on my plate had already gone cold. And there she was, laughing. Her lips still glistened with red wine when she leaned across the table and said it like a joke she couldn't wait to tell. I've been sleeping with someone else. For us. Not I'm sorry. Not I made a mistake. Just that. As if she were suggesting a vacation. I didn't say anything right away. Honestly, I was waiting for a punchline. A smirk. One of those twisted pranks she sometimes pulled when she thought I needed to loosen up. But she kept going. You know how couples fall into routines, right? Like old sweaters? I thought, maybe if I added something exciting to the mix, you'd wake up too. She sliced into her salmon like we were discussing meal plans. Outside the window, a couple was holding hands. The man kissed the top of the woman's head like he still believed in forever. And meanwhile, inside, my wife was confessing to adultery with the same tone she uses when she returns a pair of shoes. Trevor. That was his name. I remember because she dropped it so casually between bites. He's just fun. He gets me in ways that you used to, Emery. I hadn't said a word since her first sentence. My fork was still midair, hand frozen, heart racing like I'd been slapped by silence. I wanted to scream, or cry, or walk out. But all I did was sit there, absorbing every syllable like they were bullets wrapped in sugar. I wasn't going to tell you yet, she said, leaning in. But I figured honesty matters, right? She said it with such earnestness, like she expected me to thank her. Thank her for shattering our marriage over overpriced seafood. But what really gutted me wasn't the cheating, it was the plan. The way she'd scheduled this dinner. Picked the restaurant. Wore my favorite earrings. Let me believe she wanted to reconnect. When all along, she was preparing to serve betrayal as the main course. And when I finally spoke, my voice barely worked. You planned this. You actually planned this. She smiled. She smiled and said, I wanted you to hear it from me before he posts anything. That's when the world tilted. And that's when I realized I wasn't going to beg, but she was going to regret every second of this. She didn't expect me to stay calm. I could tell by the way her smile faltered when I picked up my water and took a sip, deliberately, like I hadn't just been stabbed in the chest with her words. That rattled her. And for once, I let her sit in that discomfort. She was used to me reacting, apologizing, explaining, folding in on myself like a scared dog every time she raised her voice. But not this time. Not with Trevor's name still echoing in my ears like a bad chorus I couldn't shut off. The server brought the check. I watched her pretend to reach for her purse, the same routine she'd perfected over the years. A little performance to appear polite while expecting me to cover it, as always. I let the silence hang longer than usual before finally pulling out my card. She glanced at me like I'd passed some test, but she had no idea what I'd been planning in the background. What she didn't know, and what I had nearly forgotten myself, was that 3 weeks ago, I had installed a discreet home security system. Not because I suspected cheating, but because I thought someone had been tampering with our mailbox. One of the indoor cameras, the one in the living room, had accidentally been left running on cloud storage. I hadn't checked the footage. I wasn't even sure it was still recording. But as we sat there, and she smiled like she was the enlightened one, I remembered it. And for the first time since she opened her mouth that night, I felt a chill of clarity. She thought she was in control. She thought she was the one holding all the cards. But the thing about betrayal is, it always forgets the details. It gets cocky. It doesn't consider the little things, like a motion sensor behind a picture frame. So I paid the bill. I stood up, and I said nothing. She looked confused, maybe even a little offended. That's it, she asked, almost annoyed. No yelling? No questions? I just shook my head. Not yet, I said. But soon. And then I walked out. I didn't wait for her to follow. I didn't hold the door. I let her sit there with her wine and her pride, thinking she'd won some kind of philosophical argument about love and freedom. But in my mind, I was already logging into the app, and what I was about to find would shatter her self-assured little narrative into pieces. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I just stood in the dark, phone in hand, staring at the app icon for the home security system like it was some kind of cursed artifact. A part of me didn't want to know. I wanted to pretend I could unhear everything from dinner, maybe sleep on the couch, maybe wake up and convince myself that it was a bad dream. But I knew better. And the silence of the house was no longer comforting. It was menacing. So I tapped the screen. The app opened. It had auto-archived a week's worth of footage from the living room. I scrolled through hours of nothing. Just shadows, occasional flickers of light from outside. Then, I saw a movement, 2 figures. One was her. The other was him. Not some distant silhouette, not a stranger I couldn't recognize him. Trevor. He looked exactly like I feared he would. Confident. Smug. Shirt half unbuttoned. Like he belonged here. Like he'd done this a dozen times. And my wife? She greeted him like she was welcoming home someone who'd just returned from war. Arms wrapped around his neck. Whispering into his ear. Laughing like a version of herself I hadn't seen in years. And the worst part? She looked happy. Not guilty. Not ashamed. Happy. They kissed on the couch. The same couch where she and I had once planned our wedding guest list. He poured them wine using the glasses from our anniversary set. She climbed into his lap, her hand on his chest like it belonged there. And I just sat there, breathing slowly, not blinking, watching my life collapse one recorded second at a time. She said my name at one point. That made me pause the video. My heart jumped. I rewound. Replayed. Emery has no idea. I swear, he still thinks I'm going to yoga. And then they both laughed. I didn't know what hurt more, her betrayal or the fact that I'd been turned into a punchline. For the first time in a very long time, I felt something new. Not rage. Not sorrow. Not fear. Strategy. If this was how she wanted to treat our marriage, I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't make a scene. I'd do what I always did best, observe quietly, and then act when no one expected it. She thought I'd break. But the truth is, I'd already started building something stronger, right under her nose. For the next 2 days, I barely spoke. She noticed, of course. She commented on how quiet I'd become, even joking that maybe I was finally practicing mindfulness like her yoga instructor suggested. I nodded and smiled when needed. I let her live in her fantasy where she was still in control, where her secret was cleverly tucked away behind rehearsed smiles and half-truths. But I was watching everything now. What time she left, how often she checked her phone, the little way her lips curled when she thought of something but didn't say it. Trevor wasn't just a spark. He was a flame she was feeding while I sat in the smoke. I started documenting. Nothing extreme, just screenshots, audio memos, timestamps. Every lie she told now went into a digital folder labeled Future Clarity. I wasn't planning to explode. I was planning to exit, cleanly, quietly, with the kind of precision that leaves a lasting echo. The first seed I planted came in the form of an envelope. I left it on the kitchen counter just before heading out to the hardware store. It was blank, sealed, but it had weight. Enough weight to make her curious. And I knew her curiosity was stronger than her patience. Sure enough, when I returned, it was gone. And she didn't mention it. That told me everything. Inside that envelope had been a printed receipt for a meeting I'd scheduled with a divorce attorney. A fake one. Just a name, a date, and a firm's logo. It was bait, and she bit without hesitation. That night, her behavior changed. She hovered. She offered to rub my shoulders, something she hadn't done in nearly a year. She made my favorite soup. Her eyes kept darting toward me, waiting, calculating, trying to read if I knew. She thought she was playing chess. She had no idea I was already 4 moves ahead. Later that evening, I pretended to fall asleep on the couch. She tiptoed to the bedroom, phone in hand. 10 minutes later, I heard her whisper, "We might have a problem." That was the confirmation I needed. She wasn't sorry. She was scared. And that, oddly enough, felt better than revenge ever could. The next morning, I left the house earlier than usual. No explanation. No kiss. Just poured my coffee, grabbed my keys, and left. I knew she was watching from the hallway, peeking around the doorframe like a child caught sneaking out of bed. Her silence confirmed it. She was still processing the fake envelope, still wondering if I was bluffing or preparing to burn it all down. Good. Let her squirm. I didn't go far. Just parked 3 blocks away and waited. 10 minutes later, she came out. Not in workout clothes. Not dressed for errands. Dressed to follow someone. Me. I watched her get into her car, glance around nervously, and slowly start in the direction I'd driven. I smiled. I hadn't planned this part, but it was too perfect to ignore. So I started walking. No destination, just slow, casual pacing through town. I ducked into a coffee shop, doubled back through an alley, even stopped to admire a bookstore window. She trailed me the whole time. Clumsily. I could see her reflection in the glass. I could hear her heels clicking just a bit too fast when I crossed the street. Eventually, I looped back to my car and drove off again, this time to my actual destination, a quiet office park on the edge of town where my friend Nolan worked. He's a forensic accountant, and while I hadn't told him everything yet, I'd said enough for him to help me understand what it would look like if, say, one spouse had been slowly draining joint accounts under the radar. It turned out mine had. Little transfers, frequent ones, wellness expenses coded vaguely, travel reimbursements that didn't match any trips I remembered. In the last 5 months alone, over $6,000 had slipped out of our shared savings. Nolan raised his eyebrows. Divorce or not, he said, this is theft. I didn't react, just nodded and thanked him. I think he expected more emotion. But I was beyond that now. I had proof of the affair, proof of deception, and now financial motive. All I had left to do was time it right. When I got home, she was in the kitchen. She had baked something, banana bread, maybe? I didn't ask. She looked up, startled. Her voice cracked. Where were you? I smiled softly. Oh, just needed some air. She nodded too quickly, like she was agreeing with something that hadn't been said. And for the first time, I realized she was afraid to lose me. Not because she loved me, but because she was terrified of losing her control. And I wasn't about to give her any of it back. She must have thought she was covering her tracks. The way she changed her phone passcode. How she started turning her screen face down when she walked into the room. Her sudden interest in going offline more often. Reading physical books, journaling, disconnecting from digital noise, as she put it. It would have been impressive if it weren't so late. I'd already seen enough, heard enough, knew enough. And she was still under the illusion that she could steer this narrative. But it was the group text that changed everything. Trevor, smart, smug Trevor, had no idea his number was still backed up in our shared laptop from the time he helped set up her Spotify. I knew his voice from the video, and now I had his number, which meant I had access to all kinds of things, including the invitation to a private little gathering scheduled for Friday night. A party. Casual. Upscale. Discreet. And guess whose name was on the RSVP list? Hers. Not mine. The location was one of those modern townhomes in the Arts District. Bare concrete walls, Edison bulbs, the smell of overpriced candles in every room. I showed up exactly 40 minutes after it started. Not dressed to confront. Just neutral. Jeans. Jacket. Calm. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy laughing with Trevor in the kitchen, wine glass in hand, one leg crossed over the other like she owned the world. He was standing too close. She leaned in too easily. It was so casual, so familiar, that no one around them would have guessed she was married. Not one person, until I stepped into the room. She froze. Her glass tipped slightly. She caught it, but not the silence. That fell hard. Trevor turned. His smile flickered when he saw me. He tried to play it off, stuck out his hand, said something about, didn't know you'd be here. I ignored it. Instead, I looked straight at her. I thought you said this was a networking thing, I said, loud enough for the room to go quieter. Not a date night. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Emery, I just wanted to see what it looked like. You know, the thing that was supposed to spice up our relationship. Someone in the corner gasped. Then I pulled the envelope from my pocket. Not divorce papers, photos. Stills from the footage. Labeled, time-stamped, undeniable. I didn't hand them to her. I placed them on the kitchen counter, right next to the bottle of wine she hadn't paid for. Then I walked out. I didn't need to say another word. The silence she stood in would speak loud enough for days. She didn't come home that night. Not by midnight. Not by 3 in the morning. The bedroom stayed exactly as I'd left it. Neat, untouched, quiet. No makeup wipes on the counter. No shoes kicked off by the door. Just silence. A rich, perfect silence. By morning, I had 2 unread texts from her. The first said, "We need to talk." The second, "Please don't do anything stupid." That was the one that made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it confirmed what I suspected. She hadn't told the whole truth to anyone yet. She was still scrambling, hoping I'd be silent long enough for her to rewrite the story. That I was overreacting, that I had abandonment issues, that I'd just misunderstood what she meant by sleeping with another man for both of us. But it wasn't me she needed to convince anymore. The pictures I left on the counter? They didn't stay there long. Someone at the party, maybe Trevor, maybe one of her work friends, had snapped a photo and passed it around. By midday, two of her coworkers had unfollowed her on social media. One even posted a vague tweet that said, "Y'all better stop playing marriage counselor when your own house is on fire." Then came the voicemail. It wasn't meant for me. I know that because she didn't say my name once. She was crying, gasping between words, begging someone, Trevor, probably, not to cut her off just because things got complicated. She said, "I thought you said this would make him stronger. You said I deserve to feel alive again." Her voice cracked halfway through. "Please just call me back. I'm losing everything." She was right about that part. I hadn't filed anything yet, hadn't made any legal moves, but I had withdrawn half our savings. The exact half I contributed. I also canceled the joint credit card she'd been using for dinners I wasn't invited to. I moved into the guest bedroom, locked the door, not to punish her, just to mark a line she could no longer cross. That night, she came home. She knocked on my door. "Emery," she said, soft and hesitant. "I know I messed up." I didn't answer. She slid a folded note under the door. I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to, because the only thing I wanted from her now was space, and the understanding that some apologies come too late. 3 weeks passed. She cried most nights behind the bedroom door she once locked me out of. She left little notes on the fridge, soft reminders that once would have meant something. "I made your favorite tea," or "Can we talk tonight?" I didn't answer any of them. I didn't scream, didn't accuse. That part of me had gone quiet, like a radio finally unplugged after years of static. What I did instead was breathe. I started jogging again, just 15 minutes around the block, but it felt like my lungs were mine again. I picked up a used guitar I hadn't touched since college. I met with Nolan again, not to talk finance, but just to have coffee. I laughed. For real this time. Not the forced kind I used to fake at dinner parties where she'd nudge me under the table to smile more. I wasn't bitter anymore. Just clear. She asked me once, on a random Tuesday, as I walked past her in the hallway, "Is this really it?" I stopped, met her eyes, and said no. It was a long time ago. This is just me finally admitting it. The day I left, I didn't make a scene. I packed one suitcase, left the key on the counter. No dramatic speeches, just freedom, and a quiet that no longer felt empty, but earned. What happened with Trevor? I don't know. I don't care. That part of the story ended without me, and that's exactly how it should have ended. Now I live in a small apartment above a bookstore. The walls are thin, but the peace is real. I even hosted my brother last weekend. We laughed for hours. No awkward glances. No secrets hanging in the air. Just life, as it should be, honest and unburdened. People think closure comes from confrontation, from yelling or revenge. But sometimes, closure is just walking away without needing to prove anything. So that's my story. A quiet man, a ruined dinner, and the day I stopped begging for love that was never really mine. You're watching Reddit Confessions. If you've ever lived through a quiet ending that turned out to be a new beginning, tell us in the comments. And while you're at it, what's one historical event you wish you could have witnessed with your own eyes? Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next story.